PNC News First is presented by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Pizza Hut, we're taking pizza to where it's never been before. Taco Bell, the only place where you live Moss. Colgate, the #1 brand recommended by dentists. And IT&D.
PNC News First, broadcasting live in high definition from Tumon, Guam, on KEQI and KTGM, and on KPPI on Saipan. Here is your PNC News team.
Hafa and good evening. You're watching PNC News First. We are live from the Broadcast Center at Akanta. I'm Jolene Tovas. Thanks for tuning in. Topping our newscast tonight, concerns were raised over the current version of the budget bill for operations of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches during a public hearing today. PNC's Josh Taikenko has more.
We made every effort to try to find funds for everyone.
Several agencies packed the Guam Congress building for the public hearing on Bill 186, or the General Appropriations Act of 2020. Early on in the hearing, lawmakers heard from the Judiciary of Guam, the Guahan Academy Charter School, and also the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Director Linda Denarcy made it very clear where her agency stands with this measure.
The Department of Public Health and Social Services is not in support of Bill 186-35.
She points out public health's budget was reduced from just over $60 million to just over $52 million, a decline of more than $7,800. Denarcy notes the bulk of the budget cut was on the Medicaid payment and expressed concern the over $9 million cut is needed for the local match of $18.3 million in Medicaid federal funding. Additionally, she states it would be impossible to implement the medicinal marijuana program.
Furthermore, Bill 186-35 eliminated $750,000 for medicinal marijuana program, which is needed in order for the Cannabis Regulation Commission to move forward in hiring staff to implement this program, procuring the seed-to-sell software, office equipment, supplies, and contracting services for safety training sessions for the medicinal marijuana program.
Bureau of Budget and Management Research Director Lester Carlson also provided testimony stating a key component of the governor's executive budget request and Bill 186 is keeping the existing business privilege tax rate at 5%.
BBMR cannot stress enough how strongly we feel that the retention of the 5% rate is critical to our economy and our ability to continue to provide the governmental services our people depend.
However, he pointed out Bill 186 in its current form does not adequately fund health, safety, and education needs when compared to the executive budget request, and also supported public health's position. Appropriations Chairman Senator Joe San Agustin concluded the hearing saying BBMR and the Office of Finance and Budget have been working closely together on recommended changes on the FY 2020 budget bill. Josh Taikenko, PNC News.
In related news, if you have been down to the courthouse lately, then you have probably encountered the difficulty of finding a parking space as the employee parking lot is closed off. But it's all part of the bigger picture, saving money. Supreme Court Chief Justice Merriman testified in a letter to Senator Joe San Agustin that measures such as this will be seen if Budget Bill 186 is passed as written, as the judiciary shares the consequences of the government's limited resources. Here's more. But parking is not the only thing that will be affected. Supreme Court Chief Justice Catherine Merriman says this will also affect 400 JOG employees and, more importantly, the community. While the third branch of government supports Bill 186, Merriman points out that they will only be able to, quote, squeak by during the next fiscal year, end quote.
I was thinking about that sentence this morning, and I would like to add, we're most grateful that you have allowed us to maintain the people and personnel that we have. With this budget, we do not anticipate reducing hours or laying off employees.
She acknowledges that the judiciary has been faced with reduced allotments and budgets over the past 2 fiscal years, but promises to live within its means.
Although the appropriation levels for fiscal year 2020 set forth in Bill 186-35 may be above last year's, there will still have to be necessary reductions in operations in order for the judiciary to make ends meet. Personnel costs continue to increase significantly. These expenses will increase through the restoration of increments and higher benefit costs, such as health insurance.
In her letter, the Chief Justice says if the budget passes status quo, the judiciary will take the following measures to mitigate any problems that may arise over the next 12 months, taking into account the increasing personnel costs and expenses. On October 1st, merit bonuses will be on a freeze. Any hiring of employees other than critical positions will also be placed on a freeze for the first quarter of fiscal year 2020. The courts will no longer lease an employee parking lot, and their health insurance contract will be streamlined to provide access to basic medical and wellness services for JOG employees and their families. The community will also see the impacts as the courts will terminate and reduce contract costs, quote, even at the cost of efficiency, end quote. Probation services and clerks' offices will continue to close at 4 p.m., and the electronic monitoring program contract, which is set to launch soon, will be terminated once the initial money runs out, and there will be no new equipment for court security until 2021.
Continued reductions have limited expansion of our treatment courts, postponed necessary modernization of our technology, and delayed necessary replacement and repair of capital assets. We cannot take steps to implement other actions to resolving disputes in a shorter period of time, such as adding a criminal case manager or preventing elder abuse by auditing guardianships.
Acknowledging that the judiciary shares the consequences of the government's limited resources, in closing, Chief Justice Merriman thanked St. Augustine for the restoration of some of their funding. Taking a look at crime, one of the 6 DOC officers that were implicated in the smuggling of contraband, namely methamphetamine, into the island's prison facilities, has taken a plea deal with the government, getting him off the hook on the more serious charge. Frankie Roslin pled guilty to official misconduct as a misdemeanor as part of a plea agreement signed with the government. As part of the plea deal, the charge of conspiracy to promote major prison contraband has been dismissed. The plea calls for 1 year incarceration. However, Roslin will not be serving that time. Instead, he was placed on 2 years probation. Unlike many plea agreements, his deal with authorities does not include Roslin testifying against his co-conspirators in the case. In other crime news, the 3 men who have been on the run in the case involving the largest GPD cocaine bust in Guam's history has been tracked down by authorities. Jonathan Manglona, Carl Uggan, and George Flores were tracked down by authorities after their failure to appear for a scheduled court hearing before Superior Court Judge Michael Berdalio, which prompted arrest warrants to be issued for their apprehension. According to DOC confinement records, all 3 men were arrested on July 29th. Plea deals are in the works for the 3 men. Today, PNC learned that while there was no hearing scheduled for Manglona, he was brought down to the courthouse to undergo an assessment by probation services. Brandon Michael Acosta has several court cases against him. Today, he appeared before Superior Court Judge Anita Sokola, who wanted an update on where his criminal sexual conduct and murder case stands, as Acosta's matters in her court are trailing the more serious charge. There is a possibility that Acosta may take a plea offer in the matter before Sokola. In this case, if he takes a plea deal, he'll be looking at 2 years incarceration for the burglary charges. But the deal isn't set in stone just yet, as it was indicated that the plea agreement contained errors and the corrections provided by Acosta's attorney needs to be included before considering the offer. It was noted by the government that a global plea is not on the table for Acosta. He has been in jail for 1 year and will continue to be held on the more serious case involving the rape and murder of 15-year-old Tamika Nauta. A criminal trial setting for the burglary case is set for September 30th. In other news, the U.S. government has begun negotiations on the expiring provisions of the amended Compact of Free Association, or COFA. FSM President David Penuelo, RMI President Hilda Heim, and Palau Vice President Reynold B. Oyluch met with Mike Pompeo, Secretary of the U.S. Department of State, yesterday in an anticipated bilateral meeting in Pohnpei to discuss the COFA and other matters. Following the meeting, Pompeo and the other FAS leaders held a press conference where Pompeo announced the commitment of the United States to proceed with the compact negotiations. The current amended agreement between the United States and the FSM and the Republic of the Marshall Islands will expire in 2023. Meanwhile, Palau's agreement will expire in 2024.
And finally, we're taking concrete action to solidify our bonds. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the United States has begun negotiations on extending our respective compacts of free association with each country. These compacts help sustain the important strategic partnerships that the freely associated states have had with the United States since World War II.
Pompeo said he is deeply honored to be the first Secretary of the State to ever visit the Federate States of Micronesia. In May, the three FAS presidents headed to the White House to meet with President Donald J. Trump. The meeting also marked a historical first in FAS and U.S. relations history.
And so today, I'm here to reaffirm the United States will help you protect your sovereignty, your security, and your right to live in freedom and peace. Just as we did during World War II, we will oppose any larger nation's attempts to turn the Pacific Islands into footholds for regional dominance. Beyond defense and security, the United States will continue to offer assistance when natural disasters hit, and will continue to help you build strong societies by supporting the Young Pacific Leaders Initiative.
All three nations are tied with the federal government through the COFA, an agreement which allows FAS citizens to enter, work, and live in the U.S. and its territories without a visa for a certain period of time. In other news, in light of the recent Ninth Circuit Court ruling, which ruled against the holding of a political status plebiscite on Guam, the Commission on Decolonization held a meeting earlier today where officials discussed the government's next steps in the pursuit of self-determination. The Ninth Circuit Court ruled that Guam's limitation on the right to vote in its political status plebiscite to native inhabitants of Guam violates the 15th Amendment. At the meeting, Governor Lulian Guerrero and Attorney General Levin Camacho discussed options to address the judicial decision. According to the governor, she has met with senators to discuss the next course of action. She also supports going forward with a plebiscite. Meanwhile, the Attorney General said that requesting a Supreme Court review on the decision is another option. The three decolonization task forces are in agreement about moving forward with the plebiscite. Well, this just in. A 911 report has been received regarding a drowning behind Pacific Star Hotel that occurred at around 5:01 this afternoon. GFD states that units were on scene and that a male tourist in his 30s is en route to GMH. CPR is being conducted as we speak. Now we go to our break.